Basketball is a team sport, but most of the film study I found online has been about isolation tips or how to score as a guard. If you look at modern offenses though, you'll see that teams that work to create advantages and get the best shot often outperform teams centered around star play. I couldn't find many videos going over these actions, so I wanted to make one myself. So the goal of this video is to help you understand what teams use to create advantages and easy shots. This is a coaching style breakdown, and hopefully by the end you'll be ready to apply this knowledge into your next game. Obviously I can't get to every action in one video, but I hope by the end of this your overall understanding of the game is better and you can look at basketball games to understand what's going on. Alright, just super quickly, I know y'all hate to hear this, but if you like my content, I would love it if y'all could subscribe. I think you'll look and be surprised by how new this channel is, and subscription means a lot if you want to watch me grow, especially with how the algorithm prioritizes engagement. If you really like this video, you can like and comment too. It really helps getting this video recommended, especially in the early stages. Alright, now on to the video. Alright, so I want to start us off just by going over some of the basic actions from this Duke versus Florida game. So this is going to be one of the most common parts of a play is this dribble handoff, or DHO for short. As one player has the ball, another player will run by them and collect the ball. The purpose of this is to get a run up into the ball without having the defense look at you while you're doing it. Then when you have momentum, you can attack the defense. The next action I want to go over is called a flare screen. This is whenever one player screens another player away from the ball and outside the 3-point line to get them an opportunity on the perimeter. I'm doing these two first because understanding them will help you understand everything else. Okay, using these two actions, we can define another action commonly used by Florida. It starts off with what's called a horn set, which is whenever the 4 and the 5, which is the power forward and the center, play on the two elbows of the free throw line. This horn set is called Chicago or Zoom. One important distinction though is that it does not have to be played in the horns formation despite its name. I'll talk about that later. Essentially, the ball is given to the center on one of the elbows, and then a guard from one of the corners will run up, get a flare screen by the power forward, and then a handoff by the center. This handoff also acts as a pick and roll, and Florida uses it alongside a lot of other actions to get a lot of good opportunities. Okay, back to why it doesn't need to be used in horns formation. Actually, a zoom action is just any action where you have a flare screen into an immediate handoff, and the goal is to have the guard moving as fast as possible to try to lose their defender in all of the actions. The best way to defend this is with switching defense, and if the defense tries to not switch, they'll usually wind up with problems if the guard is a shooter. Real quick, I want to touch on this. A slipped screen is anytime the screener fakes setting a screen and then cuts immediately to the basket. This works whenever the defender is not paying attention, and it usually lets the slipped screener get a step on their defender. This will be helpful later. Another screen action is called a Gortat screen, which is whenever someone screens their own man to prevent them from helping on a drive. Okay, this action is called post splits. It's whenever a passing big man gets the ball in the high post and then two guards screen for each other, both with the ability to shoot. The Warriors run this play all the time, and it's part of what gets Steph Curry so many open looks. There's so many different ways to use this play, and it's one of the most widely covered plays online. If you really want to know more about it, I would look it up. The most important part though is that the big with the ball has to be a good passer because there's so many different reads that can come out of this. For example, the one you just saw is that whenever the defenders switch, you can see this cutter slips the screen and ends up getting a look that way. In this play, Duke runs a staggered screen dribble handoff, but the main attention is on the baseline, where you have a player running baseline, which is called a floppy, and then he receives a screen, which is called a pin down. So there's actually 4 actions happening on this play, which is part of the reason why Duke gets such a good look. It's good to remember this because both floppy and pin down screens are some of the commonly used actions in motion offense where there's no plays. Here's a play called the Iverson Cut, where you have a ball handler at the top of the key and then a cutter run alongside a staggered screen action, usually receiving the ball and flowing into a pick and roll. So here you're going to see that the staggered screens usually come in the form of a horns placement, and the cutter is usually positioned right alongside the elbow. So as the cutter receives both screens, you're going to see it flows right into the shot. However, if the defense wants to take that away, there's a number of other options. This play also works as a sideline out of bounds play where your ball handler comes through an elevator, which comes from 2 screens being set by the 4 and the 5 placed in that horns placement. Because both of the bigs are already where they're supposed to be, this flows right into the Iverson Cut, as the out of bounds passer just cuts right next to the staggered screens. The next play I want to go over is called the blind pick, where you have a cutter going alongside the center, and the goal of this action is to catch the cutter's defender off guard by using disengaged movements to kind of put them to sleep. And then with the center at the nail, one guard is going to pass it to the center, who's then going to touch pass it to the cutter. The goal of this play is to punish pressure defense, so I want you to look at how high this defender is playing and how the pressure defense gives the cutter an ability to get get around his defender. Alright, the next section I want to go over is called the Chin Series. It was popularized by UConn's women's basketball team and is in playbooks across many major college basketball teams. It starts with this get action where a person runs into a DHO, into a reversal around the perimeter. The player that got the DHO is then going to cut behind the defense using a down screen by the center. The point of this is to have the reversal change the side that all the defenders go to, and then have the down screen distract the cutter's defender long enough to let the cutter get behind the defense with all of the help defense dragged to the other side of the floor. However, here you actually saw that the cut is not the end of the action, because as it's well defended, there's another flare screen that happens on the other side of the floor, and that just leads to an open shot. This is why it's called a series. Here's another example of the play, and as you're going to see, the flare screen is going to be well defended, which actually lets the player that catches the ball drive and get a bucket that way. Okay, that should be most of the actions that you need to know. Hopefully by this point you've got a better understanding of how basketball offenses work. The goal is that you can watch a game and know what's going on and why offenses move the way they do. I like to credit most of the clips I got for this video were from other channels going over the same plays in more detail. If you want to find those channels, go into the description, I linked them there. If you like this video, like I said earlier, please like and subscribe. It really helps getting this video recommended, especially in the early stages of the channel. Alright, have a good one, y'all.